My girlfriend told me she needed a night with her friends. She said it the way people say things they have rehearsed. Casual enough to sound natural. Specific enough to close the conversation. She wasn't with her friends. She was with him. And the phone in my pocket had already been collecting evidence for 3 hours before I even thought to look. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I was 34 years old, living in a brownstone apartment in the West Village, and completely certain I had built something real with Sophia Calloway. We had been together for 2 years and 4 months. I know the exact number because I have been thinking about the next step, the kind of next step that requires a jeweler and a reservation and a speech you practice in the bathroom mirror. Sophia was 32. She worked in brand strategy for a firm based in Midtown. She was precise, polished, and socially magnetic. The kind of woman who remembered the names of waiters and the birthdays of acquaintances and made everyone feel like the most important person in the room, including me, especially me. For 2 years and 4 months. We had moved in together 8 months earlier. A 2-bedroom in the West Village with exposed brick and a kitchen window that looked out over a courtyard where someone always seemed to be walking a dog. It felt like the life I had been working toward. Sophia had a core group of friends, Elise, Margot, Charlotte, women she had known since her early 20s when she first moved to New York from outside Philadelphia. Girls' nights were a regular fixture. Monthly, sometimes twice a month. Always in Manhattan. Always somewhere I had heard of. I never questioned them. I want to be honest about that. I never went through her phone. I never asked to be tracked. I was the partner who trusted completely, partly because I believed in her, and partly because I needed to believe that what we had was what it appeared to be. The Friday in question was the second week of October. Sophia told me Thursday evening that she and the girls were doing dinner in the East Village, then drink somewhere in the Lower East Side. She mentioned Elise had just gotten a promotion. She said not to wait up. It was textbook, detail-rich enough to feel real, loose enough not to require confirmation. I said to have fun. I kissed her. She left the next evening at 7:15 in a dress I had never seen before. I noticed the dress. I noticed it the way you notice something that doesn't quite belong to the context. Not dramatically, just a small snag in the fabric of normal. It was a black wrap dress, silk, or something close to it. She had curled her hair. She was wearing the perfume she saved for occasions. I told myself it was just a nice night out. I made dinner. I watched something I don't remember. I fell asleep on the couch around 10. At 11:47, my phone buzzed. It was a location notification. We shared locations with each other. Mutually, openly, the kind of thing modern couples do, without much discussion. I hadn't looked at it in months. The notification was automatic. A system alert I had set up a year ago and completely forgotten about. Triggered when a shared contacts location moved outside a defined radius for more than 2 hours. Sophia's location was not in the East Village. It was not on the Lower East Side. It was in Tribeca. Specifically, it was on a residential block in Tribeca. Not a restaurant, not a bar, not a venue of any public kind. A building, an apartment building. I sat with that information for a long time. I want to be accurate. I sat with it for approximately 11 minutes, which felt like much longer, and in those 11 minutes I ran through every reasonable explanation I could construct. She could have changed plans. They could have ended up at someone's apartment. Elise might live there. Margot might live there. I opened Instagram. Elise had posted a story 40 minutes earlier. She was at a bar in Williamsburg. With Margot. With Charlotte. Sophia was not in the photo. I put my phone face down on the coffee table. I picked it up again. I opened the shared location. Sophia had been in that Tribeca building for 2 hours and 19 minutes. I want to stop here for a moment because this is the exact point where everything branches. What would you have done right then? Driven to the address? Called her? Said nothing and waited for her to come home? Tell me in the comments. I'm not being rhetorical. I genuinely want to know. I called her at 12:04. She answered on the third ring. Her voice was calibrated, warm, slightly slowed, the specific cadence of someone who has been drinking, but not too much. Hey, you still up? I asked her how the night was going. She said great. Elise was on her third cocktail. The bar they were at had the best mezcal she'd ever tried. She was describing a bar she was not in a neighborhood she was not in. with friends whose Instagram had already placed them somewhere else entirely. I said I was glad she was having fun. I said sleep well. I hung up. Then I did something I'm still not entirely sure how I feel about. I opened her shared photo album. We had a mutual album, vacation photos, apartment stuff, the ordinary documentation of a shared life. She had added photos to it that evening. 3 photos, uploaded between 9 and 9:45, labeled, I assume, in case I looked, which she calculated I wouldn't. The first was a table with cocktails and a charcuterie board. It could have been anywhere. The second was a candid of what appeared to be the inside of a restaurant, slightly blurry, artfully unspecific. The third was a selfie. Sophia, smiling, hair curled, silk dress, alone in the frame, taken in what was clearly a bathroom, a private bathroom, not a bar bathroom. The towels were folded too neatly, the fixtures too considered, the space behind her too quiet and too clean. Someone else's apartment bathroom. The photos had been staged and uploaded as cover. Not spontaneously, deliberately, with enough forethought to select images that looked social without confirming a specific location. That level of preparation is what broke something open in me. Not the betrayal of the moment, the evidence of rehearsal. This had been done before. The system was too clean for a first attempt. She came home at 1:53 in the morning. I was in bed. I heard the key in the lock. I heard the deliberate quiet of someone trying not to wake a sleeping person. I lay completely still. I listened to her wash her face, brush her teeth, ease herself into bed with the careful movements of practiced deception. She was asleep in under 10 minutes. I was awake until 4. The next morning, I said nothing. I made coffee. I asked if she was hungover. She laughed and said only slightly. She described the bar in the East Village again, a different detail this time. A DJ she mentioned some story about Charlotte arguing with a bouncer. The story had been expanded overnight, filled in, reinforced. I nodded. I refilled her coffee. Over the next 4 days, I did something methodical. I reviewed 6 months of location history. Our phones had been sharing location the entire time. She had simply never considered that I might look with intention. I found 4 other evenings. 4 other nights where her stated location and her actual location did not match. Always the same Tribeca building. Always on nights framed around social events with a clear, named cover. The pattern was undeniable. It had a rhythm. Once or twice a month. Always on a Friday. Always with a version of the same story. I want to pause here because this is the part that I think deserves a real question, not a rhetorical one. When you see a pattern that deliberate, not a single moment of weakness, but a system, a routine, a constructed alternate life, does that change how you interpret the person you thought you knew? I'd genuinely like to hear your perspective in the comments. On day 5, I did one more thing. I searched the address. It was a residential building, a doorman building. I found the name of the unit associated with the floor. The location data consistently placed her on through a combination of a public record search and a LinkedIn cross-reference that took me longer than I expected, but eventually resolved clearly. The name was Nolan Prescott, 38 years old, senior director at a private equity firm, based in New York. His LinkedIn had a profile photo, professional, unremarkable, the kind of face that belongs to a certain kind of New York career. I found his Instagram. It was mostly private, but his tagged photos were visible. In one of them, from 6 weeks prior, Sophia was in the background. Not prominently, not tagged, but there, in a group shot at what appeared to be a rooftop event, standing close to him, her hand at the edge of his jacket. 6 weeks before I had planned to look at rings. The conversation happened on a Tuesday. I had chosen Tuesday because it was ordinary. No occasion attached to it. No drama of timing. We were eating dinner at the kitchen table. I had cooked. She had poured wine. Everything looked exactly like our life. I put my phone on the table between us. I had the location history open. I had the Tribeca address visible. I had the tag photo pulled up. I slid it toward her and said, "Tell me about Nolan Prescott." The silence that followed was one of the most complete silences I have ever experienced. She looked at the phone. She looked at me. She looked at the phone again. She did not deny it. I think she understood, in that moment, that the architecture of what I knew made denial useless. What she did instead was cry. Almost immediately. The kind of crying that might be grief or might be the response of someone whose primary tool, charm, composure, social fluency, has just been rendered completely ineffective. I genuinely could not tell which it was. I still can't. She said it had been going on for 7 months. She said she hadn't known how to end it. She said she hadn't wanted to lose what we had. I asked her what exactly she thought we had, if this was what she was capable of building inside it. She didn't answer that. I asked her to give me a week in the apartment alone. She stayed with a friend in Murray Hill. I don't know which one. During that week, I was very quiet. I ran in the mornings along the Hudson. I called my brother once. I did not post anything. I did not perform grief for an audience. I thought about the 2 years and 4 months. I thought about what was real inside them. Because not all of it was constructed, I had to be honest about that. Some of it was genuinely good. Some of it I would carry forward regardless. But I also thought about the system. The photos staged in a bathroom. The stories expanded overnight. The pattern across 6 months of Fridays. You don't build that kind of architecture around a mistake. You build it around a decision you keep making. When she came back for her things, we were civil. We divided what needed to be divided. She took most of what was hers. I kept the apartment. My name was on the lease before she moved in. She cried again at the door. I held it open. I have not spoken to her since. Nolan Prescott, from what I understand secondhand, did not become anything permanent either. I don't know the details, and I did not seek them. What other people do with the rubble of something like this is not my concern. I am in the West Village apartment now. The courtyard dog still appears most mornings. The kitchen window still catches the light the same way. I'm not the person who moved in here 8 months ago, but I am, for the first time in a while, entirely myself. No version of me shaped by someone else's convenience. No instincts suppressed to protect a story that was already over. I am 34 years old. I know what I want. I know what I will not accept. That is a more valuable thing to come out a year within a ring I almost bought for the wrong person. Personal reflection. What this story reveals isn't simply infidelity. It's the cost of a curated life. Sophia built a parallel existence with the same precision she applied to everything else. The protagonist's real reckoning wasn't with her betrayal, but with his own willingness to trust without looking. Neither instinct was wrong. Trust is not naivety, but patterns, when finally seen, don't lie. He lost a relationship. He recovered himself. Those are not equal losses.